Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri.
And Amy Cornell.
And we hope that you all have enjoyed some of the summer shows, the repeat summer shows that we've been doing, because as we said, we're going to keep doing some of those. We just have we have had so many new listeners in year 5 that it made a ton of sense to kind of present those shows again, because not everybody goes back through the archives. Like, I'm just going to listen to Amy and Penny from year 1. Like, I don't know who really has time for that. Much as we'd love you to do that, I don't really know who has time for that. So we're going to definitely keep doing that. Be on the lookout for that as we are, representing is not really a word, I don't think, but it is now. I'm one of those people just making up genres. But we are going to be showcasing some of the more popular shows that we've had. So definitely be on the lookout for that. This is something, today's show idea is something that, again, happened very much in the trenches. And we have just seen so many authors that are doing their Amazon ads wrong. I mean, I don't really know how else to say it. And by wrong, I don't necessarily mean their ad copy or even the book cover. Because if Amazon's not presenting your book, or if the ad is not being presented to the right genre, then nothing else really matters. It doesn't matter if you spent $3,000 on your book cover and you have the best book description. You're literally not gonna, Amazon's not gonna sell your ads. And the other part of it, though, too, that I have to consider is that I understand if you all are out there just kicking it, because I just launched the Amazon Author Formula Workbook, which is doing great, by the way. Thank you all so much for your support in that. But if you're out there and you picked up the workbook, you're like, I got the first book, I picked up the workbook, I want to do my own ads, and you're jumping into this and you're super excited. And I think that's great. It's the reason I wrote the book. But a lot of times we get, I think, authors sometimes overshoot their targets. I mean, Amy, is there a better way to say that?
No, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, we've done how many shows talking about the importance of really understanding who your market is, who your reader is, connecting with those readers. And this is just a very specific example. And I think it's worth focusing on ads in particular, because not only is it marketing time and money, but then you add in your ad budget too. So this isn't just like you wasted your time sending out some pitches to people that may not have been the right influencers for your genre. It's like, well, that's a bummer. You know what I mean? But Amazon ads are not only costing you time and money, but then the ad budget on top of it. So this is definitely not an area where you just want to assume everything is going right. And even this week, Penny, we had an author reach out to us, and in their book description, it said, this book is for everyone. And I immediately was like, is it though? You know? Because and I explained that to her, and she was very receptive. And I said, it doesn't mean that your book doesn't have an appeal to a lot of different kinds of people, but you have to be really smart about whether you want to, dig in on that when it comes to your marketing and branding. Oftentimes that's something that needs to be discovered organically. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, but the other piece of this too, is that Amazon will punish you in ways that only Amazon can if your ads are being targeted to the wrong consumer, right? So you will get dinged in terms of, so the trajectory of the ads is, so you run an ad, you pick the wrong genre, Amazon will, if your bid is strong enough or whatever, your Amazon will present the book. Nobody clicks on it. Amazon's going to, or people, even worse, people do click on it. So now you're paying for that. They get to your page, they don't buy your book. Both cases can potentially be really bad because Amazon will um, Amazon will keep push your visibility down. It dings your relevancy score and it dings your visibility. So the genre fit is what really dictates the ad success. And it's not just the category on Amazon, although obviously that's important. But when you're thinking about fiction or nonfiction, you have to think about um, the expectation of the reader, um, the emotional payoff. And, if you've written fiction, lean into the tropes, right? Because those are the things, especially for fiction, those are the things that really sell books. And, an easy example of this might be um, small town holiday romance, for example. Those are really specific. That's a really specific reader market, right?
Mhm.
That reader market typically doesn't dip into the, hotsy totsy erotic romance reader market. They don't really cross over. So because small town romance can have some spice to it, certainly. But a lot of these books are also sweet romance.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the other piece of this is that being as crystal clear on your genre as you are pulling together your ads. And also, as we said, what's in it when, especially when you're doing nonfiction, what's in it for the reader? What are the payoffs? What is the audience really going to get a specific, and I know this doesn't sound fun. Like I realize that Amy and I love it because we love to nerd out on all things Amazon. I realize that that's not that's not everybody. You know what I mean? It it is a it just it's a problem, and I've seen this problem whenever if when I do consultations only, because we also run ads for our clients, but when I do consultations only for authors who are kind of working on their own, I see this all the time. Like a romantic suspense book. And again, not to continually lean into genre fiction, but like a romantic suspense novel that you feel is suspenseful, but that isn't really suspenseful. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
I mean, okay, so maybe there's a little angst, and you have to think about, so as you're putting together your ads think of it like a bookstore, right? And many of us haven't, I love going to bookstores. I could spend an afternoon in a bookstore. If it has a Starbucks, I'll be there all day, right? But think about a bookstore where, if you were to walk down, a book aisle and there's all these books on, let's say, health and fitness, whatever, okay? And then in the middle of those books is a tax book for dummies. You would have pause with that and you would think, well, who put this book on this shelf? And this is kind of crazy.
Mhm.
Authors do this with their ads all the time. I know
Mhm.
this, I don't mean to like overgeneralize that this, but it happens. I mean, Amy, you've seen it even outside of the ads, and sometimes when authors come to us and they're super confused on where the book really belongs on the shelf.
Oh, and it drives me nuts when I'm doing keyword and category research when I see books in the wrong place. And, if I'm being honest, I almost always assume it's some sort of twisted strategy. It wasn't an accident,
Yeah, 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 exactly.
like somebody's trying to game the system because they know this is getting a lot of eyes. And so they've found a way to get their book somewhere where a lot of eyes are, but it's not the right eyes. So it really fits into what we're talking about here. Yes, you are getting your book showing up in perhaps a currently popular category, but if those are not your people, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
If anything, you're just confusing the reader, the shopper experience, which is a bad look too. And I'm sure Amazon, in all their, creepy oversight, pays attention to that as well and has ways to track that. If you're
yeah,
messing with the shopper's experience by putting your book somewhere where it doesn't belong, whether it's ads or categories or keywords, they are not going to be happy because unhappy shoppers don't spend as much money.
yeah, exactly. And I think that, it's really important as an author, which again, I realize this is the not fun part of being an author. But it's really important to understand what your reader wants. And the only way that you're really going to do that is by reading in your genre. And we talk about this all the time. And I know, like, I understand that it takes, it takes a while to, like, it takes time away from writing other books if you're reading other people's books. But I do it all the time. I think it's really, really important. But you also have to remember too that the ads really function on um, a couple of key factors. So obviously there's budget, which we're not really going to get into today. The ads, um, they live and die by the internal Amazon algorithm and how they're presented, right? That is really the only thing that matters to the ads. In fact, if you were to spend a lot of time just identifying your genre and run an ad without any kind of ad copy, a lot of times, and this is really where, yeah, I'm sorry, now I'm just on my soapbox. This is where I talk to a lot of authors when I'm doing consultations. They're like, I spent so much time on this ad copy. I spent an inordinate amount of time on this ad copy. And maybe they put it on Facebook and they got other people's input. And I will tell you that the ad copy matters so much less than whether or not you're presenting the book to the right reader.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not the same. I mean, and you could even, I mean, it's hard to do A/B testing on Amazon. People are like, oh, you have to do A/B testing with Amazon ads. I'll be really honest with you. It's not easy to do A/B testing with Amazon ads for a variety of reasons. One of which is the fact that Amazon reporting is like their reporting is delayed and it's all weird and everything like that. But I think that what you have to look, just keeping that bookshelf in mind, you have to realize that when there's a genre mismatch in the ads and it impacts the reader experience, it impacts the consumer experience on Amazon's side. Your ads are going to cost more. Amazon's going to stop presenting your ads in the first place. You're going to have to spend more just to get visibility. I mean, it is a vicious, vicious circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, things, so one of the genres, well, there's actually several genres that I find when I'm doing ads that authors get confused about. Business books are a good example of this, right? So so when you say business books, it's kind of like saying I wrote a romance, right? It's like, okay, well, what kind? Right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you have the business book for, like, okay, is your business book written for somebody who's been in business for 10 years? Or is this for somebody who literally is in their garage with their desk and just like doing their business on the side till they can quit their job? Like who's right?
Yeah, big difference.
It's a big difference. It's a big difference in all of the things that matter, not the least of which is who you're targeting for your ads. I mean, um, cozy mystery is another one. I mean, and Amy, throughout genres that you've seen, but cozy mystery is another one. So cozy mystery, so often authors throw the books in mystery because mystery is a popular category. Like, I get it.
Right.
But now you're potentially competing with, so first off, cozy mystery is whimsical, right? So like, there's a little fun element. Maybe it's like an elderly couple solving crimes and things like that. And if you put yourself in the mystery, or heaven forbid, mystery/thriller, now you're competing with authors like, I don't know, Karen Slaughter, where there is
Right.
nothing like. Amy's in the middle of reading one of her books right now. I've read a bunch of her books. There is literally nothing whimsical about Karen Slaughter's books, right?
No, not at all.
So I mean, Amy, throw out some, not to put you on the spot, but throw out some genres that go.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely see this a lot, and I personally find it challenging, not in a bad way, but when we're working with science fiction authors, because
Oh, yes.
there are sci-fi, there's so many different ways that sci-fi can go. And I feel like those, just like there is in romance, are very much a reader preference thing. Like you don't see, at least in my experience, a ton of crossover between somebody that likes straight up sci-fi that is out in space with aliens and intergalactic stuff versus the just near future Earth sci-fi that has some creepy scientific stuff woven in and, government conspiracy. Like those are two very different readers.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's a big one too. Science fiction and then even fantasy too, because fantasy can be, I think there's a little bit more wiggle room in fantasy, but there are still very different ways that you can go. And there are people that, there's some romantic elements, and somebody that's really looking for romantic fantasy elements is not likely to go for something that has no romance whatsoever. And I think, we haven't used this term in a while, but it still is going to be one of those that stays in my head forever, trying to sell a cat to a dog person.
Oh my gosh, we haven't used that analogy in so long. I love that.
I know. And so for those of you that have been listening since the beginning, you may have heard us mention this. It came up at actually a romance writers conference, and it was a really fantastic panel of very successful indie authors that kind of just talked to the room about, how they got to where they were. It was very inspiring, but that was one of the lines that one of them said. She said, I had to figure at some point I had to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't going to be able to sell a cat to a dog person. So she really had to get serious about who her different reader markets were for her different series. And she could not rely on converting one of her reader markets into a different series that was designed for a slightly different reader. You know what I mean? She wasn't going to bank on that crossover. And she said, once I gave up on that, I actually enjoyed marketing a lot more.
Well, and that's a really good, that's a really good point. And I'll tell you something that if it feel look, I understand that book marketing is not easy. Amazon ads are, confounding to many authors. But if it's really, it should not be that difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult. And I think that if you are, and we're going to talk in a second about how to figure this out. Like if you're listening to this, you're like, okay, and you're nodding, you're like, okay. Tell me how to figure this out. We'll talk about that in just a second. But if your ads have high clicks but no sales, right? If your ads seem to be burning money without any traction, because when I do an Amazon ads call with an author, again, for somebody that we're not working with, this is the first thing they'll tell me is they'll say, my ads are just burning money without traction. And then I go in there, and this is another thing. I mean, I know we don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. It's like, I'll go in there and then they have like one keyword. They have a single keyword. I mean, they may have a lot of keywords, but one of the keywords is book or something. And I actually have my head in my hands right now because when I see that word book, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to really just stop doing that. And I think that a lot of times and the really unfortunate big red flag is when a review appears on your retail page and somebody says this wasn't what I expected, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? So think about how you can kind of reverse engineer this. And I think, yes, getting to know other authors and books in your genre is really important. I would say analyze the top 20 books that are in your category or the category that you think that you're in, I guess is maybe a better way to put it. And really look for is there a cover match, right? Does your cover feel similar? Are the descriptions similar? Not similar in that you copied them, but I mean, they have sort of the same vibe, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
Amy, you mentioned like a sci-fi. I have sci-fi, and sci-fi was a really, really good example. Like a dystopian description is going to be vastly different from just a straight sci-fi.
Right. Absolutely.
So you really have to, and again, this is your virtual shelf. So go through and figure out, okay, so I aligned my book with this. Is this really is this really what the buyer wants? Is this really what my reader is expecting? And then I think when you have nonfiction in particular, you really have to dig into reader psychology, which again, oh my gosh, I could do like a 5 hour show on this and y'all would be bored and never listen to us again. Freaking love talking about reader psychology all
I,
day, every day. Amy can tell you, I'm just like, oh, I'm just, I love it. But you have to think about the reader psychology behind this too. You have to think about, again, just to go back to like the business book, somebody who's been in business for 10 years does not want to know how
mhm.
to, you know what I mean? Like there are different, they have different incentives for getting their books. And I think this is across the board for anything that you're doing um, related to nonfiction. You really have to think of where is your reader right now? And going after that particular, going after that particular segment as in as focused way as you can.
And I think to add to that, Penny, it's a really good point that you're making that I want to point out. You said right now, and we often forget to talk about the fact that very little that has to do with Amazon is a static strategy that should stay that way forever.
Yes, yes.
You
Sadly,
know, it's
yes.
like, so sorry to add that on to everybody. It's like, oh, we're just now trying to figure out how to do ads, and now you're telling us we have to figure out how to read. But once you do this more often, it'll be more second nature. And once you figure out how to do this kind of research and how to do this kind of assessment, it really will start making a lot more sense. And you can improve on your traction and your visibility and even your sales so much by working on these things consistently, even a handful of times a year, you know.
Yeah.
And we've done shows on timing and things like that, like considerations throughout the year and how you can change up your marketing. So we don't have to go into that now. But I think ads are the same way. This is definitely not a set it and forget it because you figured it out once. It's going to be figured out for the life of your book.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's really hard. And, you and I have talked to enough authors that we know this. Sometimes it's hard to get out of our own way,
Mm-hmm.
right? When an author has their heart set on a particular genre, and maybe it's not even something, because a lot of times this happens where you get the idea first and the genre second, right? Like, I want to write a book about XYZ and then I'll just figure out the genre second, which is really not a good way to write a book. But I know that a lot of authors subscribe to that. Like, I know that that's so you are, then you get this genre in your head because maybe then you send the book to the editor and the editor's like, oh, well, this is such and this is such and such. And you're like, okay, well, that's my genre. And so now you're following this train to its inevitable and potentially unsuccessful conclusion because foundationally you started out with an idea rather than, researching the genre. And a lot of authors do this. Like, I get it. There is still like you can make corrections to your, and Amy can speak to this too. So your book description, correcting any of the emotional hooks, correcting, we talked about tropes, correcting any of the tropes that maybe weren't, that need to be included or maybe were included and aren't really, changing up your cover. Because once you start to really say, okay, I need to take a serious look at my ads, as opposed to just walking away from Amazon ads saying, none of this works, Amazon hates me, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, just download your keywords and really get honest with yourself and say, do these really make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And please don't use keywords like best-selling book or new bestseller or so, because you will just pay so much money. You'll pay so much money for these keywords, right? And then the other piece of it though too is that okay, so let's go back to the mystery author. So let's say, yeah, I want to rank number one in mystery. I was running an ad set for an author, and I don't know if this is still the case, but the word mystery, like, it was $33 a click.
Oh,
And I was like, first off, there's literally no ROI in that, right?
yeah.
And Amazon, Amazon's kind of sneaky that way. Like, they'll throw out these really big, broad keywords, and honestly, it's to your detriment as an author because they're just like, oh, authors are going to really want to be ranked number one in romance or number one in business, and then you pay this money for this keyword for a click, and then you don't sell a book because your book is not really aligned correctly. the other piece of this too is the further that you dig down into this genre, the less expensive your ads are going to be. Not only because of the click through, like click through rate's better, you're not pulling in all this random traffic, but keywords that are more long tail, so they're further down the rabbit hole a little bit, but more in line with your audience, it's going to be a cheaper way to run your ads too, you know? Um, so what have we missed, Amy? What did we not cover? Because I know I've been sort of rambling.
No, I think also too, it's worth mentioning for anybody that's feeling, because you already mentioned like, okay, don't give up on this. Because we talk about this a lot internally, and it's another thing that I feel like we could say more. Um, Amazon ads are really one of the only marketing strategies that can be working for you 24/7.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yes.
We mentioned this a lot internally because it's kind of it is a very frustrating concept because it takes time and effort to really figure these out. I mean, Penny's been doing it for literally years. So when authors are like, just tell me how to do it, it's like, I swear it's not that simple. Like if we had that secret sauce, we would sell it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of it really is kind of getting in the trenches and just experiencing what happens back there and doing the research and kind of getting in the right frame of mind. But it's totally worth it because literally there is no other form of marketing that can be working for you behind the scenes when you're busy writing, when you're busy with your regular life, when you're busy with your day job, all those, or when your marketing budget feels pretty tapped on all the other big ideas that you had, for the quarter. Smart Amazon ads can keep that train moving for you. And it's quite literally the only way new people every single day can get introduced to your book. So it really is a fantastic tool. But to Penny's point, with all these tips she shared, you want to do it the right way, obviously, because it could also just be a big dumpster fire of cash.
Oh, I know it. I know it. And I mean, spend 30 minutes just, spend 30 minutes, just study the top 10 books in your genre, right? Um, Re-look at your ads, make sure that you're putting the reader first.
Mhm.
Um,
Make sure your retail page is saying what you need it to say. I think
yes.
that's another one, Penny. When you mentioned we get too close to our own work sometimes, get a second opinion, third opinion, professional opinion on your retail page and what you might be able to do differently, because it's really hard to explain your book in a really fun, dynamic, exciting way when you know all the secrets, all the plot twists, all, you know what I mean? You know how it all goes, but to put yourself in the mind and shoes of somebody that knows nothing and trying to recreate that first impression experience for somebody else, that's really challenging to do when you know all the ins and outs.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of this too, is that first impression. These ads really have to align with the first impression shoppers need to experience in order to potentially click that buy button.
Right, exactly. And I'm really glad that you mentioned that about the ads, because the ads they are a great way to be, if you're doing all the right things to get 24/7 in front of your reader. You just really want to make sure that you are, you know, to Amy's point, ads can't they won't fix a bad book, right? They won't fix a mismatch. They'll really only amplify what isn't working. So that's the thing that you want. And this isn't about, there's a lot of books out there about the tricks and the low budget, and start your ads with like $1 or not a dollar, a penny. You know what I mean? Like just underbid. And trust me when we say, and I think I can speak to Amy on this, that there's really no tricking the Amazon system.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no tricking the Amazon system. And just to be full disclosure, I mean, so when the workbook went up, when the workbook first went up, Amy looked at the book description, and because of course I don't write my own book descriptions in a vacuum, she steps in and helps me with that because we're all too close to our own stuff, even me. And she looked at that book description and she's like, well, the workbook has, all of like you have access to like all the back end stuff, all the forms, all the cool stuff in the books. You don't have to like write all over your book if you don't want to, or if you bought an ebook, like you can click the QR code. And she's like, you need to mention that in the book description. Head slapper, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally missed the opportunity to mention that the book gives you access to all these forms. Everybody's too close to their own work. Even somebody who does this for a living, we're close to too close to our own work. So, just keep an eye on those Amazon ads. I want you to be successful without spending all of your money and being really discouraged, because that's not a fun way to market a book.
Right.
All right.
And Penny, just real quick, for somebody
Yeah.
that's just starting off with this, or maybe wants to do like a reset, would you say it's reasonable to start small and build from there versus trying to cover all the things with your ads?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, like really narrow down one thing you want to achieve, one, you know, kind of niche buyer market that you want to connect with, and do those right before you start creating ads for all the things. And then you have 8 balls flying in the air that you're trying to control.
Right. And you know what? I'm so glad. Oh my gosh, this is why she's my co-host, because, or we're each other's co-hosts, I guess, is a better way to say it. Because she always comes up with these great ideas. I will tell you that when I talk to authors and they say, well, my book is this, and my book is this, and my book is this, and my book is this. Okay, your book's not allowed to be 8 things, right? But a lot of times this is when an author gets really confused on their genre, right? And where we start to see genre mismatch and that kind of thing. To Amy's point, okay, so maybe your book has like, okay, but my book has first responders in it, and those people that'll be interesting to first responders. My book is also set in the 80s, so I want to pull in that nostalgia people and all this other stuff. Start with one thing. Start with one particular. Start with the low-hanging fruit, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. Right? Start with that, and then build from there as you start to get your feet wet, because it'll be a much, much better experience for you in these ads, to get them to where you need to be. And also, it's also a lot less overwhelming, right? If you start out with focusing on one particular area, So the Amazon ads are really not, yes, they take a little bit of work, but they're totally worth it. As Amy said, it's a 24/7 way to market. And there's very few things that are that, right? And I think, when I talk to authors, because I talked to an author this morning, he's like, can you run my Facebook ads? I'm like, no. And it's not because I don't like Facebook, because I'm on Facebook, but the Facebook ad platform they've really made setting up ads so efficient, right? Whereas with Amazon, you have to put in all the things, you have to figure out Amazon very much mirrors Google AdWords in this way. The problem with running ads on different platforms, like even running them on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, every time that you ask somebody to click, you lose 20% of your audience. So there are a number of flaws in the system when you're trying to advertise on other platforms, which is why we always love and favor Amazon ads. And with that, Amy, did we cover everything?
We did this time.
Okay, good. All right. Well, listen, we will see you next time. Thank you all so much for listening. And thank you for the reviews. We love reviews. We just had a recent one in, I think in June. We got a couple more in June, actually. And it's a really awesome thing when we pop open and we see those reviews. So we love if it's a little bit too squirrely. I know that sometimes iTunes can be a little squirrely, or Apple Podcast rather can be a little bit squirrely to leave reviews. You're welcome to send them to us, and we'll put them up on our website. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.